Started because our sessions have all been a bit time challenged, so we'll make sure that we get going. So we have one. Okay, so good. All right, they're coming in. Are we ready to clap? Okay, that's great. All right, so good. All right, now we've done the public humiliation. We can roll right in. So everybody, I'm Jamie Justice, and I'm really happy to be here. So have been involved with the Biomarkers of Aging group now for a couple of years, and it's been a great privilege and a pleasure. And so today I get to lead this symposium. And it is actually sponsored by XPRIZE. So that is, I still do hold an adjunct appointment at Wake Forest University School of Medicine, but now my primary work is all within XPRIZE Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation, and I serve as the executive director for XPRIZE Healthspan, which I'll talk about today. But really, this session is about biomarkers. So we're going to talk about frameworks and biomarkers of aging for clinical trials. We've already had a few sessions about that throughout this meeting. But today we'll have 4 speakers. So we have John Tsang will be here from Yale University talking about a unified metric of human immune health. We also have Raghav, who we just clapped for, also from Yale, and he'll talk to us. Well, he's not going to talk to us about DNA methylation aging biomarkers for clinical trials. He'll actually be talking about some new data, which is always fun. Forget I said that. We also have Nir Barzilai from Einstein College of Medicine to talk about biomarkers for gerotherapeutics. And our last speaker today is Austin, who from Mass General Hospital here in town for harnessing proteomic aging signatures as a tool for preventive medicine. Okay, so now a little bit about XPRIZE. So we'll start with this. Who here has heard about this initiative, XPRIZE Healthspan? Oh, you've just made my life a lot easier. So we can jump right in. And particularly today is I'm going to give a little bit of framework around what the prize is, but I'm going to spend a little more time talking about what it is as an opportunity for validating surrogate biomarkers for gerotherapeutic testing. So again, for those uninitiated, the prize is actually 2 prizes. We call it a $101 million prize. It's actually $111 million, but it's separated across 2 prize purses. So one is for the Healthspan prize, which is the parent prize, $101 million. The second $10 million is a bonus for a rare genetic condition, but it's one of the most common types of muscular dystrophy is FSHD. I'm really only going to focus on the Healthspan prize, given the nature of this audience and conference. So the main barrier being addressed by the prize is that we now live up to 30 years longer than we ever have. But the function and health is not maintained throughout that duration. And so we're trying to incentivize proactive and accessible therapeutics that can actually improve function and increase human health span. And the improved function is important. So not just prevent, delay, or attenuate, but this is one of the major challenges that we're looking to drive forward. And again, so the mission of XPRIZE Healthspan is to provide proof of concept that biologic aging is a target for therapeutic development. It's to create a global research network in health span and aging research so that we can identify and align labs, companies, and researchers, so both those that are developing therapeutics and those that are working on biomarkers or gerodiagnostics. We also want to stimulate important investments in longevity, biology of aging, and biotech. So again, we do this not just through the contribution of that prize purse that people go after, but again, that's a prize purse that's at different milestone points and at the end. And so we're using and we'll be coupling, we have different investor summits. Our first one is coming up in May. So that pairing those teams that are competing with people who are funding and investing in this space. And so it's a way for us to actually drive engagement and new investments in the area. This one, very important for this group in particular, is to develop methodologies for measuring health span in early stage trials. So right now we have a framework that's really focused on function and performance, but this is a great test bed for both developing and validating new biomarkers. And then finally, of course, is we also do have that $10 million bonus prize, which is really to stimulate new therapeutic development and also public awareness for persons who are aging with FSHD. All right, so those are the goals and the missions. Now, what exactly is it? As a competition overview, what we've proposed our teams to do is, again, we're really incentivizing translation to early stage clinical trials with our grand prize centered around what are essentially phase 2B trials. And so the winning team has to demonstrate that their therapeutic treatment, either given alone or in combination, can restore muscle, cognitive, and immune function in persons who are middle-aged and older. And their therapeutic has to be administered in 1 year. So we'll have baseline testing, 1-year intervention, post-testing. And that we award the funds for this based essentially to the magnitude of improvement in each of those domains. So we are going to be doing a lot of modeling to see what the declines would be expected in 10 years, 15 or 20 years, and that we set the amount that's awarded according to, again, the magnitude of improvements that are shown. And it does have to be all three. All right, and so again, why 81, not all 101? That's because it's a long prize over 7 years, and so we have different milestone points along the way to incentivize and help people refine. So what's coming up first is qualifying submissions, which are due on December 20th. For those who would like to join us, please do. Feel free to talk to myself. Annika, if you could stand up. She's our team's relations manager. She's your first point of contact for anybody who wants to compete. And she also helps develop our partners and networks. So if you're looking for other people to work with, it's a great person to talk to. She'll help partner you up. So again, we have qualifying submissions due December 20th. Out of these, we pick down to our top 40 teams, go on to semifinals. Those top 40 teams, we make that first distribution of $10 million. So it's essentially $250,000 per team at that stage. Not a ton of money to run early stage trials, but it's a token of our appreciation. And again, those semifinalists go in front for an investor summit that will be hosted in May. So we do try to help teams as they're searching for funds to run trials. Those semifinalists have just over a year to run a small proof of concept or feasibility studies should they need them. Have they not already done them in the past? And again, out of those, we'll select down to the top 10 teams who go on to finals in 2026. And those finals, that's where you can win up to $81 million. All right, and the FSHD runs throughout this time as well. Again, that's what the timeline looks like. Again, we're right here at the very beginning of this, and the final awarding will be out at 2029, 2030. You can see those same milestone points just added to the years of the prize. All right, so where do we stand right now? This has been a big point of interest. We've been tracking and following the numbers as they come in. We still have about 6 weeks until qualifying registrations close, and we currently have over 460 teams from 53 countries. All right, so now what are we asking them to do? I'm going to focus on the finals testing. We're going to talk about those clinical trials, the 1-year trials, because this is, I think, the most important point for biomarker development and validation that I want to emphasize today. And so the driving question for my entire career, whether as an academic or now within XPRIZE, is if we did have a therapeutic that could improve health span, how would you even know? I think that's one of the fundamental questions we've all been asking here over the last 2 days. Biomarkers are an incredibly useful tool for that, but we have to have a way to validate them. And so this is one of the goals within XPRIZE, is to begin to answer this. And instead of waiting just for the FDA to tell us what an endpoint is that there are ways that we can either try to establish some common frameworks that were okay, even for early stage testing of more novel therapeutics or combinations. It was working, and now it's not. Back. There we go. It's reloading. Try it again. Nope. There we go. Okay. So if you want to test, again, there are many different possible endpoints for clinical trials in aging. Of course, we have the things that the FDA would be most interested on. Oh, now it's working too well. Can we go back? I don't think I'm controlling this anymore. Okay, we're just going to stay with this one here. So again, we have, endpoints that can be adjudicated in trials that have the FDA's interest, right? That you can show that you've changed the way an organism or population function, feels, or survives. Those are great for phase 3 trials and really important to move the field forward. But there's also a really great role for more novel biomarkers and physiologic endpoints that I'd say are much more appropriate for sort of phase 2B trials and early stage trials. And of course, as you move along this continuum, so too do you move along in terms of time, expense, and the salience of the endpoints. So this is, I think, fairly well known. So XPRIZE Healthspan, we're really focusing sort of down on this earlier end of this spectrum. And the endpoints that we've selected is, again, this was a large, long, and hard-fought process between our advisors, is figuring out, okay, what are the most user-friendly endpoints, right? So if you're talking to somebody, what's meaningful to older adults to get them to change what they're doing, their behaviors, or to take a new intervention or try something new. And what was meaningful is to say, I want to be able to perform the way that I used to perform and play with my grandkids. I want to maintain cognitive function. And also, we just made it through a pandemic. So one of the other things that pulled really strongly is, to have the immune resilience to be able to leave my house and interact and engage with others. And so these are non-disease-based endpoints that are still very important and meaningful to people. And importantly for us, they all have different measures within them that can be used for primary assessments. And so under each of these, and again, I'm not doing details in this one, you can find it, it's published online, or if there are questions, I do have slides at the end. But again, we're framing these as function and performance measures. So there'll at least be, 3 or different composite measures within each one. But what's also important is within each one is that there's a role for biospecimen-based biomarkers within each. And so that there will be sample and specimen collections. And so we are, in some cases have already named biomarkers that are affiliated with each of these endpoints, endpoint areas. And in some cases, like immune function, the finding is that there's not currently a standard biomarker that should be used. And so that we have a lot of work to do over the next 1.5 to 2 years in order to begin to find what an appropriate measure is and the referent data in which to measure it. And of course, there's a big area there in the middle, is that we're defining these by muscle cognitive immune function, at least in terms of awarding, but there is something there, what happens to sort of this more latent area that might transcend any one of those functional endpoints. And so while that's currently not part of our judging assessments for awarding, it doesn't mean that it won't be, or it doesn't mean that it's not interesting to us. And so I think that's really important, is that I do hope to expand the number and types of biomarkers that are included. Also important is that when we're judging these Healthspan finals, these are, again, 10 teams that are running different trials around the world. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know what they're testing, but we will have a centralized data coordinating center. And we're also giving people a common framework in which to test. I think this is really important for biomarker validation. So we're asking people in their 1-year trials, it really is actually a 15-month footprint, so that there's 3 baseline measures, 1 month apart. They do whatever intervention they're going to do, and then at least 3 measures at the final. And so again, this is more of a structured as a single crossover trial, which is important statistically and actually makes doing biomarker development and validation work much better. And so what we're going to be looking at is having, again, those serial assessments, so each person becomes their own control. Even though we can still ask teams to randomize and have a true time control group, this is also really important for creating a data set that makes it really effective to identify both response biomarkers and start to develop surrogate markers for future trials. And so here, each person essentially becomes their own control, and how we're doing the awarding is basically a responder, non-responder for each of those threshold levels. So it's on an individualized, or actually a personalized basis rather than individualized, according to their age and sex. And so in this way, we'll be able to determine, again, for muscle, are you a responder, non-responder? Immune, responder, non-responder. Cognition, responder, non-responder, and the awarding is based on that. And what this means also at the back end is that you now have a common data system. If we have all of this going in, have specimens that go with it, there's a lot of opportunity to add biomarkers and to add work. But in the meantime, we have a huge need that we actually need longitudinal referent data on muscle cognitive and immune function biomarkers, particularly biospecimen-based biomarkers, so that we can establish these reference thresholds. So I'm really interested to talk to anybody who's working in this space. A lot of work to do and very little time to do it. So we want you on board. All right, so now I'm going to really briefly set up the rest of our talks on biomarkers. As again, in terms of the prize, yes, we're talking about we do need biomarkers around these three areas. We are going to have some consensus workshops, and we're looking for partners and validation, especially around immune function, which John will talk a little bit about later, and just had a conversation with David Furman and others. So again, a really great area for development. Sorry, these are going out of order. We have a big need around this as well, that we're looking for judge considerations around biomarkers of aging or other things that can be developed to supplement those three areas. And of course, we'll be looking at safety, tolerability, and other clinical risk factors is something that's really important. So we will have different blood-based panels for other people that are developing markers, or if you want to do something like a Clomara-Duval or a PhenoAge or something else, is that hopefully we'll have the data available. And then next, the most important, of course, is when we're talking about surrogate, there's no single biomarker that's the best biomarker. But there are certain assumptions when we go for clinical validation. One is that if you can look for the response, right? So is your intervention working? These are things at baseline that you can begin to predict response. You can also look at things that change or are responsive to an intervention, or the surrogate marker, of course, would ideally be something that is a mediator of that intervention. But these assume that we have an accepted aging outcome. And this is, I think, really important for like a TAME or a TAME-like trial. Those large FDA trials are incredibly important. But on the road to get there, can we use some of these functional endpoints as a surrogate to that would still be meaningful? And then two is that we have interventions that can change that. And so again, those are huge assumptions. And the next thing is that if you do want to go for biomarker qualification, is that it's not a single trial. You have to have multiple trials and begin to build dose response curves in order to do that validation work. And so what we're proposing in XPRIZE Healthspan is at least creating that data set that you can begin to construct this by having a coordinated system, a coordinated database, and the samples available in which to start doing some of this work. So for those that are interested, please come with us, is because we've been in this chicken and an egg, right? So you begin to develop biomarkers on one side, but you have to wait for the interventions. And then you try to develop interventions on the other side, but you have to wait to get the right biomarkers. And so this is a great opportunity for us to kind of hold hands and develop them together. And to do it from the ground. And so again, that's why this group and this consortium is so important. And I'm thrilled to have you all come along with us. We have a lot of inputs going into this from the consortium. Really interested in our partnership with the Methuselah Foundation. Has been outstanding. Would love to see the winners of that competition be able to test their biomarker within the trials we're proposing in XPRIZE. And of course, there's a lot of work that we all still need to do, people to pitch in. We're also still looking for in-kind support or additional sponsors for biomarker measures. For anyone who's interested in joining with that for the 2026 to 2029 period, there's still time to jump on board. And with that, I thank you so much. And again, these are some of the people that helped make it possible. Their Endpoints Committee, the amazing different scientific advisors, and many people that contributed to this. It has been an army in the background. And of course, my immediate team, one of whom is here, Annika. And so please do reach out to any of us at any time. We're an open book. Thanks.